In these clips, we see aircraft carriers under attack by kamikaze aircraft. Carriers were prime targets for the kamikaze pilots given their strategic importance to the war effort. Roughly 30 U.S. carriers were struck by 49 kamikazes in World War II. 3 carriers were sunk, and many were put out of action for repairs. The intent of this video is to review aircraft carrier anti-aircraft defenses, lessons learned, kamikaze attack tactics, and the impact attacking carriers had on the Allied war effort. This is the channel's 9th video covering ship-based anti-aircraft armaments, gun sights, fire control directors, and picket destroyers versus kamikazes. These videos reside within the channel's ship-based anti-aircraft armaments playlist. Kamikaze attacks were by far the greatest threat faced by the U.S. naval fleet during World War II. They were responsible for 64% of all ships damaged and sunk. A kamikaze attack is 3 to 4 times more effective in ship strikes than conventional bomb or torpedo attacks. Kamikazes are a force multiplier. U.S. aircraft carriers were categorized by their size. The smallest is the escort, bogue, or jeep carrier, CVEs. These hold around 24 planes and are lightly armed and armored. The fleet carrier CVs are the largest. They hold around 100 planes and have roughly the same anti-aircraft armaments as 1.5 heavy cruisers. The Independence class or light carriers are sized between the escort and fleet carrier. They hold around 40 planes and their anti-aircraft armaments are roughly the same as a destroyer. Aircraft carriers are armed with 3 types of anti-aircraft guns in various mounts. The long-range 5-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose twin enclosed mounts like seen in these images, single open 5-inch 38 caliber guns like seen in this image of a gun mounted on the Yorktown, 40mm Bofors twin mounts as shown on the Hornet, 40mm Bofors quad mount as shown on the Hornet, 20mm single Oerlikon autocannons, and 20mm twin Oerlikon autocannons. This image shows a battery of 20mm singles and 5-inch single open mounts located on the Enterprise CV6. All 3 types of guns are shown in this single view: an Oerlikon 20mm single, a Bofors 40mm quad, and a 5-inch 38 caliber twin enclosed mount, as seen on the light cruiser Biloxi. This table represents characteristics of the anti-aircraft guns and projectiles mounted on the carriers. All of these parameters were covered in detail and data referenced from the channel's playlist videos shown earlier. Significant parameters when engaging kamikaze aircraft include the gun type. Open fire ranges of the guns are 5-inch at 12,000 yards, 40mm at 4,000 yards, and 20mm at 1,200 yards. At a range of 12,000 yards or 6.8 miles, a kamikaze aircraft will strike the ship in 71 seconds when traveling at a speed of 300 knots. The ship's broadside should face the plane to expose the maximum number of guns to the threat. The 40mm gun's fire time is 23 seconds at an open fire range of 4,000 yards. The 20mm gun's fire time is 7 seconds at an open fire range of 1,200 yards. The rate of fire in rounds per minute equate to 5-inch gun at 15, Bofors at 120, and Oerlikon at 480. Each 5-inch gun barrel will shoot 17 rounds, 40mm 46 rounds, and 20mm 60 rounds within their open fire durations. The 20mm gun will be able to expend only a single 60-round magazine in 7 seconds. The 5-inch gun's projectile fuses will be either proximity or timed. The ideal fuse ratio for a long-range target is 75% proximity fused and 25% time fused. Short or medium-range targets should be 100% proximity fused. The fuses for the 20 and 40mm projectiles are contact only. Only the 5-inch time-fused projectiles have tracer elements. All 40mm projectiles have tracers, and every other 20mm projectile is fitted with a tracer. These videos show the 5-inch guns firing with tracers at a slow rate of fire, 40mm twin Bofors firing with tracers at a medium rate of fire, and the 20mm Oerlikon singles firing with tracers at a fast rate of fire. Tracer elements are much more clearly visible during night action. The proximity fuses are set to detonate the projectile when within 75 feet from the plane. These large black puffs of smoke are due to the 5-inch projectile's detonation by either time fuse or proximity. If the projectile detonates far from the plane, it's a timed fuse projectile. If it detonates close to the plane, it's either proximity or timed. Only the 40mm projectile has a self-destruct feature. For surrounding ship safety, it will self-destruct after 10 seconds of flight or around 5,000 yards. Follow this 40mm projectile's tracer path and count the duration. You will see a small black puff of smoke after 10 seconds of flight, indicating the 2-pound projectile has self-destruct. The smoke size and distance from the ship helps in distinguishing the puff of smoke as either a 5-inch or 40mm projectile. The 20mm projectile does not self-destruct, and no puff of smoke will be seen unless it contacts the target. The 20mm tracer element will burn out after around 4 seconds. The number of rounds per kill is a measure of the combat effectiveness of the projectile. This page from an October 1945 anti-aircraft action summary report outlines the anti-aircraft armaments based on ship type at war's end. Fleet carriers mounted 136 barrels total, 4 5-inch twin mounts, 4 5-inch singles, 17 40mm quads, and 56 20mm singles. Light carriers mounted 40 barrels total, 2 40mm quads, 9 40mm twins, and 8 20mm twins. Escort carriers mounted 37 barrels total, 1 5-inch open single, 8 40mm twins, and 20 20mm singles. The number of AA barrels on a light carrier is slightly lower than that on a destroyer, 40 versus 42. In order to be effective at long range, 4 5-inch gun barrels need to be trained on each single attacker. Only the large carrier has adequate number of 5-inch guns to engage a kamikaze at long range. The light and escort carriers will need to rely on the screening battleships, cruisers, and destroyers for long-range engagement. Tactical doctrine requires screening support ships to be within 1,500 to 2,000 yards from the carriers, as discussed on this page from an April 1945 anti-aircraft action summary document. This distance allows for ship maneuvering and mutual fire support. When a task force is under kamikaze attack, 60% of the planes that are shot down are destroyed by the screening ship, and the remaining 40% are shot down by the ship under attack, from a September 1945 Navy Fast Carrier Task Force document. The target ship is typically protected by 4 other screening ships. Each screening ship adds about 1/3 more equivalent firepower as a target ship. So how effective were kamikaze planes in sinking warships? These charts from a 1946 United States Strategic Bombing Survey report outlines the number of U.S. warships sunk or damaged by kamikaze aircraft in World War II. Kamikaze sunk a total of 3 escort carriers and 12 destroyers. That's it. No fleet carriers, light carriers, battleships, cruisers, or escort destroyers were sunk by kamikazes. All these ships sustained some damage from the strikes as represented by this chart, but none were sunk. This page from a 1945 Suicide Attacks Against Allied Ships document outlines a summary of suicide attacks from October 1944 to June 1945 based on ship type. 14 CV carriers were struck by 29 kamikaze aircraft, none sunk. 2 CVL carriers were struck by 2 kamikaze aircraft, none sunk. And 14 CVE carriers were struck by 18 kamikaze aircraft, 3 sunk. This table lists the type and name of carriers struck by kamikazes from October 1944 through May 5, 1945. H indicates a kamikaze hit, D a damaging near miss. The Intrepid in Saratoga was struck 4 times during the war but not sunk. A kamikaze strike on the Intrepid, Saratoga damage from kamikaze strikes. The ship's 5-inch single open mounts, Mark 51 gun director, and 40mm twin mounts are all visible. Escort carrier St. Lo was hit once and sank. Albany Bay hit once and sank, and Bismarck Sea hit twice and sank. Damage or attack images from these escort carriers. The Randolph CV-15 was struck once. This image shows the damage from a kamikaze attack on the Randolph. This table lists a percentage of kamikaze planes shot down based on ship type. Fleet and light cruisers were credited with shooting down 11% of attacking kamikazes, whereas cruisers and destroyers were credited with 8 and 3% respectively. CVs and CVLs are around 37% more effective than cruisers in shooting down kamikazes and 3.7 times destroyers. Carriers are more susceptible to damage than other warships. 2/3 of attackers either strike or near miss a carrier given their large size. Escort carriers perform better than expected given their slow speed and reduced armaments. This clip shows how a kamikaze may attack a carrier.
Any type of approach may be expected. Deep and shallow dives and low-level runs. The enemy continually varies his type of attack. One recent method has been to approach at low altitude from the bow or astern, parallel to the ship's course, thereby reducing AA fire, and when opposite the ship to execute a wing-over and crash into the bridge.
The kamikaze will aim their plane to strike the carrier's plane-filled flight deck to increase the degree of fire damage. If the deck is clear, then he will aim at the superstructure or elevators. This is the location of the carrier's elevators and superstructure. The kamikaze plane is usually loaded with one or two 250-kilogram bombs. Although carrier sinkings by kamikaze aircraft is low at 3 sunk out of 49 strikes, a larger cost is the out-of-action effect, as discussed on this page from the reference shown earlier. 70% of carriers struck by kamikaze aircraft required them to be out of action for repairs. Average time for repairs was 1 month. Most of the damage from kamikaze strikes is not by plane or bomb hit, but by the fires they create. Most crew casualties are by carrier fires. U.S. carriers were fabricated with wooden flight decks, whereas some British carriers were fabricated with armored flight decks. Armored deck carriers were more capable to absorb damage, but their air complement was reduced to 45 planes, around half the number of planes as an Essex-class carrier of roughly the same size. If you have found this human-produced carrier armaments video interesting and informative, please consider commenting, liking, and/or subscribing to World War II U.S. Bombers.